Well, hello, good people. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I appreciate you guys coming into my workshop. And actually, let me close the door here. I have completely changed what I do in my workshop because of my inventables. And I tell you what, the range of things that you can do, I know I've only scratched the surface of, but I tell you what, it's created more work for me. A lot of different work, but stuff that I could never even dream of doing before. When I originally bought this thing, I bought it because I was going to use it to cut out cabinets. I have yet to cut out a cabinet because of the artwork that I've actually been doing with it. For example, take a look at this. Now I've got to epoxy this, but this is Purple Heart wood, and it's of course a wedding photo of and the mother-in-laws and stuff of a couple. So I'm actually going to put epoxy on top of this to finish it off. But you can see the depth in the pictures and things. I'm doing some other different stuff. Now you probably can't really see this that well right now. This is actually just fresh off the machine. I've got to actually take a wire brush, clean it out, lightly sand it with some 220 grit, and then spray it. And when you spray it, this is a different one, but you can start to see the detail here. This is actually Drew Pearson's Hail Mary catch from Roger Staubach. And so then you'll go through and sand the edges, of course, more, but lightly sand the top of it. And then it becomes this. Look at that. That is freaking amazing. This is it's almost a three-dimensional drawing, of course. It's actually, if you look at it closely, you'll see the lines that the machine is literally cutting into it and making into an artwork. I actually spray urethane. I'm going to lightly sand it with 220 grit, put a couple more coats on it. But these are amazing, the stuff that you can do. Here's another one right here of Charles Haley behind all of the Super Bowl trophies. It's really cool. So today I've actually got a lot of work to do, and it's not just those 3D ones. This is actually a sign that I've got to do for a gentleman. I'm going to end up painting the details on top of this, and then we're going to epoxy resin it to seal it up for good. This is actually a piece of wood from a house, an antique heart pine house from the 1830s. So it's a special piece, so we're going to leave it rough because we want it to look rustic. But to have that detail, I think, is actually really cool. And even some more antique heart pines. Sign for the house, for the farm, and the meadow. So the range of things that you can use and work with. I'll give you one more too. It's a little dusty here. I've got to actually polish it off. But this is another thing that we do. Taking the scrap wood that I have, the different hardwoods and stuff, putting it together, and I've actually carved out, of course, a star in there, painted it blue, sanded it, and then put epoxy resin on one side. So this way you can have one side up, the other side will end up sanding, of course, and finishing it out, and putting oil on it. So you can actually use it as a cutting board. So it's a dual purpose piece. All these things are things that I couldn't do before I got the Inventables. And it's creating a lot of work for me to keep up. The thing with this is, as far as doing this for business, I'm a YouTuber. I actually have another channel, the Jobu Sports Report, because I'm a diehard Dallas Cowboy fan. And I've actually been scared to really push this out to try and create more sales on it because I'm afraid I'm going to get flooded with it. Just from people watching a few videos and seeing and saying, hey, I'd like this, that, and the other. It's kind of hard to keep up because this isn't full-time. I am kind of a jack of all trades. I've got rental properties that I take. I've got a 200-year-old house that we're in the process of beginning to renovate and will actually rebuild. Of course, this is kind of the lull before the football season kicks off. So I've got my hands in a lot of different things. But if I had to do this over again, this is a big investment. And it will take time to pay it off. I mean, that's literally The 4x4 unit over there is regular price $12,000. Fortunately, Inventables has financing that you can do, and that's what I end up doing. So for the next 2 years, I'll be paying it off. But easily, it's paying for itself, just doing the few things that I'm doing. I know if I were able to really just step it up and just say I'm going to do it, I could really make really good money off of it. My biggest problem for me is putting that machine over there. It's basically about a 5x5 footprint. Well, this is a 2-car garage, so it takes up quite a bit of space. And when you're working in a small space like this, with the amount of tools that I have and equipment, you can see 25-inch dual drum sander over there. There's an edge sander over there. There's a full-size wood lathe. There's a dust collector in the corner. There's a 2-horsepower bandsaw over here, a 3-horsepower shaper, radar saw. There's a lot of equipment. The equipment eats up so much of the shop. We've had to figure out ways to try and maximize the space. So even today I'll be working on, I've basically made a spray area outside, so I'll spray some spar urethane on the signs so that way it can dry out there. I will sand these pieces and spray varnish them outside as well, so I can do that. I've created basically drying racks over here, and you can see I'm actually working on 2 bookcases. One's right there, and the other bookcase is over here. So I've got to get another coat of paint on these as well as paint the shelves. So space is a premium here, and my biggest limitation is if I do really ramp up with the Inventables, I need more space to keep up with it, because ideally what would be great is if I were to double the size of my workshop, ideally, because then you can create a workflow. You could end up having the first half of the building being the wood storage unit. So as soon as you come off with the, hopefully roll up doors, you can have all the lumber and everything in there, and then create the table saw, the Inventables, and the other equipment on the outside perimeter of it. So you can bring in the material in, you can build and fabricate it, and then you have an assembly area next. And from there, you go on to a separate closed off room that would be a well ventilated finish room. So you could have the sprayer set up to spray, the pieces that you need, and drying racks and so on, and then another roll off door. So you can create an assembly line. And that is my dream to do, probably the next step, a year or two, basically get a big space and set that up. And if I do that, then you could really say, okay, we can create production. Because the things you can do, for example, because this machine is so big, especially, it's 4x4. You could set up, like if I'm doing those prints, I could set up 3 or 4 of those on one piece of wood, and it'll go through and cut out each and every one of those pieces and just let it do its thing while I'm doing other stuff. And so that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today. Is I'm going to be using the machine. It's going to be cutting out other stuff, and I'm going to be here sanding and polishing and finishing and painting and doing all that stuff. So this is a small workshop, but I do get quite a bit out of it in the space that I have, but kind of finagling, So I hope you guys, if you have any questions on anything that I have or whatever, one other thing I'll tell you about too. Probably about 15 years ago, pocket hole jigs. I actually have a pocket hole machine that's over here. It's actually a benchtop one. But what I did with it, and maybe I'll do a video on it to show you guys. What I did with it was I created a work center around it. So instead of it sitting up on a benchtop, it's sitting in flush. And with that, I actually put in, they have these keys for putting the clamps. So that becomes a whole workspace. I can use it as a workbench. As you can see, I've got all that stuff over there. I've got a butcher block that we've got edge glue. I've got the other pieces that I need to go ahead and sand before we put the next coat of varnish on it. But it also has expanding tabletops. So you create additional workspace. And this place looks cluttered, I know, but it's like, it's the clutter of, I know where everything is and stuff, so don't touch it. So if you have any questions on anything that I have in here or any of the stuff, or if you have an Inventables and you're doing stuff on there, and you want to share with me, or you want to ask me a question about it, feel free to leave something in the comments and we will definitely get back to you on those. So I've got a lot of work to do Sunday afternoon, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Hope you're having a great weekend. See ya.